Hello, and welcome to the Google DoubleClick HTML5 Immersion Days with a focus on QA. Today we are going to talk about QA and how to make sure that your ad passes, things to look out for, best practices. We'll go through a demo, and then Amanda here will go through how to fix it. And by the way, I'm Roger from Google, and this is Amanda.
Hello.
So I'm going to start presenting now. And as I said, welcome to HTML5 Immersion Days. The agenda, first thing we're going to talk about top 10 reasons for failing QA. Going to go through some best practices. I'll show you a demo of the user interface and then how to QA an ad. And as I said, Amanda will then fix the broken ad that we QA, and we'll leave time at the end for some live Q&A. Let's dive right in. Top 10 reasons for failing QA. Number one is events do not trigger or trigger incorrectly. If you have events that never trigger, they should definitely be removed from an ad before you send them to QA. Also, you want to double check all events actually trigger and trigger in the correct user action. Next, the creative does not have a solid border. This is not a 100% across the board for all publisher requirement, but the majority of them do require it. So it's always best practice to put in a solid border. Next, when a counter is used instead of an exit, you want to make sure that you're calling enabler.exit in all of your studio exits. Sometimes they trigger as counters, and that'll definitely trigger a failure. The next one's for mobile. You want to make sure that the screen orientation changes at runtime. So basically, when you switch the phones from side to side, it changes from portrait to landscape, and the spacing of the ad remains consistent, or at least the layout changes so that it still looks good. The next one is videos that don't have controls. Not being able to mute or play or pause or rewind videos definitely will cause publishers to not like your ad. Number seven, you want to test all exits and make sure that there's at least one in the ad. Studio requires there be at least one exit, but then just as best practice, you want to make sure every single button in your ad that is an exit launches a new window, doesn't trigger a pop-up blocker, and it goes to the correct landing page. Next, for dynamic specific ads, there's two of them. You want to verify the number of dynamic values in the feed are correct and that the dynamic content is pulling in correctly. You can do this by creating tear sheets so you can modify the dynamic values, and as you refresh the ad or see the multiple versions of the ad, you should see different properties pulling in. You want to make sure that you check all of the properties that are potentially going to pull into the ad. Sometimes if there's text fields and there's too much text, it'll spill over into other parts of the ad. You want to make sure that doesn't happen. The last top 10 reason is pop-up blockers are being triggered on desktop browsers. So you always want to check for that as well. Next, we'll move on to some best practices. Some of them fall into that top 10 category as well. You want to make sure that non-user initiated animation stops after 15 seconds. And also non-user initiated video stops after 15 seconds. The creative should collapse when exiting from an expanded state. Also, when it collapses, you want to make sure that it's turning off all of the video or audio noises that are going on. Number four, file size. We just got an IAB update. The max initial load is 200K, so you want to make sure that your ad is falling into that size. Number five, replay button after video finishes playing. Users like to watch videos, so you want to make sure to give them a way to watch it again. The next one, you want to make sure all sound is initiated by a click action initiated by the user. Ads that pop up with sound automatically make everyone crazy, users as well as publishers. You also want to make sure on that same thread that audio has a mute button. Being able to toggle it on and off is definitely good to give them control. The final video frame, try not to stop on a black frame. That takes up a ton of ad space and isn't showing the user anything. So either replace that with a new image or use one of the still frames from the video. As I mentioned before, you want to be able to collapse the ad from the expanded state, so all expanded states should have close buttons. You also want to make sure that creatives that start expanded should auto-collapse after 15 seconds. That kind of relates back to the user-initiated animation in video for 15 seconds. We keep that duration consistent. Triggering manual close events when the close button is clicked. We want to know if that user closed it on purpose. And then lastly, you want to check the video file size. Nothing is worse than trying to download 2 gigs worth of video into a mobile ad. All right, now I'm going to switch over to our QA demo. I'll show you the UI, and then I will also walk through QAing an ad. So the UI, once you get into Studio, there is a button up here, QA. Once you click on it, it will take you to, I've already picked up the ad, so it's not showing me the right thing. It will show you how to pick up your ad. I've identified the Voro Expand Demo 2 as the ad that I'm going to demo. So then the important elements of the page, once we're here, are the Show Detail button. This is where you're going to see everything that's happening within the ad. You can see in the creative details if it's Flash or H5, the size, pretty much everything about it. Files will list every individual files as well as the components that are being used in the ad. The events, these are all of the events that you're going to check for when you're QAing. You want to make sure that every single one of those triggers. Display properties is for moving it around on our screen right here. And then the two bottom ones, event summary and event log, are the two we're going to focus on when we're actually QAing our ad. The event summary, you can filter by customer standard types of tracking, as well as triggered and untriggered. As you're going through the ad, if you are clicking on a bunch of buttons, you might lose track of what events have triggered and which ones have not yet. So you can always filter by those to see which ones you still need to trigger. The event log, equally as important, it's showing in real time as you interact with the ad what is going on. So if I roll over it, I'm going to trigger the Rich Media Interactive impression count. The Rich Media Interaction timer is going to start, and as I roll off, you'll see that in real time those things stop. So I'm going to refresh this page so I can clear out that event log, and then I'm going to start my QA. As soon as QA will let me start my QA. There we go. All right, my ad should be showing up here. Welcome to the world of live video, people. Always bugs. Let's try a couple more refreshes and see if we can get this going. If it doesn't work, we can try to switch computers. All right, I'm going to jump way back into my developer mode and see if I can force this to show up in QA again. I'm going to do that by editing an event, which pulls it back into developer mode for me. Then I'm going to change it back. We're going to preview, and it's telling me I don't have enough backups, so we're going to go and double check on that. All right, it has recognized my backup image. Hopefully we can jump through to publish now. Excellent. All right. All right, I republished a QA. I'm going to jump back into the QA console. It appears for me again. And I will trust what it is telling me, that it's actually loading.
Please bear with us, folks.
Yes, of course. Sorry for the delay. I'm going to try to force another refresh and hopefully get back into this lovely loop of our ad not loading again. Oh, there we go, maybe. All right, we've gotten a little more loaded, but still not our ad. There we go, okay.
Yay.
Thank you for bearing with us. We are going to start our first run through of QAing this ad. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check for functionality. I want to make sure that the navigation in the ad is going to work. I'm going to make sure that exits are working, things like that. So I'll click to expand, and I am greeted with an autoplay video that is playing audio. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but it's definitely playing audio, and there are no buttons for me to turn it off. So that is the first thing I'm going to note in my QA report that needs to be fixed. So going from the video page to the specs page, that seems to navigate fine. So go back to video, jump over to 360, that navigation works. Jumping from the specs page to video works, and from the specs page to 360 works, and then from 360 back to video, and 360 to spec. Okay, I've identified another bug. Navigating from the 360 page to specs, that button navigation is not working, so I'm going to note that down in my QA. Next, I'm going to check on all of the close buttons. So we'll start, since we're already on the 360 page, I'll hit the close button. That closes. I'll expand again. We'll check the video page. That closes. I'll expand again. Uh-oh. Okay, clicking on the logo does not expand our ad. So it looks like there's a layering issue where the logo is over the top of the expand button. So I'm going to note that down in my QA. And then I still need to check my specs button closing. Oh, and I noticed that the specs page is not properly closing either. So lots going on with this ad that needs to be fixed.
It sounds like the developer really just wasn't paying much attention when they made their ad,
Yes, or they maybe didn't check it before they submitted for QA, which is always a best practice. Or perhaps we broke it on purpose just to have something to show you guys. All right, so now that I've checked the close buttons, I'm going to go and check all of the exits. So let's start off with the video page. If I click on the background, it does exit, but I notice another bug where the audio is not stopping and the video is not collapsing. So I'm going to note that. So from the specs page, I can exit. That opens up fine, and it does collapse the ad appropriately. That's good. Now I'll jump to the 360 page. Also collapses the ad, and no audio playing, so nothing to stop there. All right, so that functionality test has pretty much, I've clicked every single button in here that I could possibly click. There are a couple other things that I can interact with, though. I want to make sure that on the specs page, this is actually a swipe gallery. So I want to swipe through the whole way to make sure that that's working. And then on the 360 page, make sure that that actually is functioning as a 360. Okay, so functionality testing is done. The next thing I'm going to move on to is testing for the counters. I want to make sure that all of our counters are going to fire. So if I go to our event log, instead of hitting refresh, which messed everything up before, I'm just going to hit this button, clear log. So starting from the beginning, I roll over it, and we start our rich media interaction timer. When I click on the ad, I can see that the video play starts, the rich media expansion starts, and the video first quartile starts. So I'm going to let this run all the way through and make you guys deal with this wonderful music for a second. We've gotten through the midpoint and the third quartile, and then hopefully we'll hit a completion. All right, so now we've checked the video counters are all playing through. Next, I'm going to come over here to the, on that same panel, let's test our exit. It's going to open up. It's not going to close, but we'll notice here it did track my exit. Next, I'm going to close the ad, and I'm going to see that the expansions have stopped, the interaction timer has stopped, we've triggered a manual close. So all of those things are good. That's what we would expect. So we'll jump over to the next tab, and we're going to do all of the same things. We'll click on the background. We're going to see that the expansions stop. We triggered another specs exit. We want to click on the close button, which we identified doesn't work, but if you notice, it doesn't close the ad, but it is tracking a manual close. So that's another thing that I want to note in my QA report. While functionally it's broken, it's not closing the ad, tracking-wise it is triggering the correct function. So next panel, the 360. Okay, again, I'll do a little spin, make sure it goes all the way around. We're going to test our exit here. Okay, we see our 360 exit. We see that everything's closed again. And we see our, if I scroll a little bit. Oh, sorry, the exit. We need to click the close button still. There we go. Now we see the interaction time stop. But this one, while it did collapse the ad, this one did not trigger a manual report, a manual close report. So I'm going to note that into my report. So the next thing I want to do, I've pretty much gone through all the buttons that I know to click. I want to come up here and see, is there anything that hasn't been fired that I should be looking for? These first two, we actually identified as a bug. We're having the Eng team look at it to see why they are not triggerable. We noticed, here's one that I haven't triggered, the swipe gallery frame tap. So let's go into the swipe gallery. And the frame tap is actually when you click on the frame. So I can scroll through, I can tap it, it triggers an exit, and oh, maybe it needs to be in frame 1. Let's see. Yes, okay, so there we go. The next things are the backup image. That's not going to fire right now because I haven't served a backup image. And then these video mutes and plays and pauses, I can't trigger those because I don't have any video controls. So this is going to need to go back to a developer. I'll show you a QA report that we would generate and send back to the developer. It calls out the 6 things we found wrong with this ad. There's no border. 360 page specs button does not work. On the specs page, the close button did not work. On the 360 page, the close button did not trigger a report manual close. On the video page, it starts with sound and there are no controls. And then also on the video page, the background exit does not collapse the ad or pause the video. So at this point, I would send this report back to the developer by hitting the reject button. I would enter the reason. I can copy and paste all of that in there and hit reject, and this will send an email back to the person who submitted this ad for QA. So at this time, I'm going to pause for a moment to present a different screen, and Amanda will walk you through how to fix your ad. So let's launch Google Web Designer. And there we go, handing it off to Amanda.
Okay. Hey, everybody. I'm Amanda, again. And I'm the developer who wasn't, couldn't be bothered with doing any of my own QA. I was really, really on a tight deadline and just shipped it off, and I didn't really check a lot. So clearly that's come through. I've got my QA report back, and there's a lot of things I need to fix. Hopefully I should be able to fix them pretty quickly, and I'll show you how right now. So we've got our ad here. I'm looking at my QA report, and the first thing I notice is that on the main page, the BG exit is covered by the logo. Well, okay, that's a really easy fix. I've got my logo here, and if you look at the layers, you can see that this layer right here, which is my Voro logo, that is on top of the expand button component. So I can just click on the expand button component here in the layers, or I could even click on it on the right on the screen here in the main page, and then use my layer reordering, bring to front, up on the top. Now it's on top of the Voro logo. Now if we preview the ad, I can check to make sure I've fixed it. Now we can see that it works. Oh my goodness, that's so annoying how the video plays with sound and I can't stop it. So I'm going to fix that one right now. Okay, so let's go to the next page. That would be our expanded page or our video page. If I click on the video component and go into the properties drop down here, if I scroll down to the bottom, we've got component properties. There's a nice little checkbox right there for controls, which I've left unchecked. Well, all I need to do to fix this is select controls. You can see the controls pop up here. I can preview the ad again, and now I can use the ad. Oh my gosh, that's great. So that's the first thing I need to do. There were a couple other bugs found on this page. One of them is that the background exit does not collapse the ad or pause the video, which I can tell if I were to unmute this and then exit. It's still playing. That's not good. So let's fix that. We're going to do that by adding a couple events. So if I click on the background, you can see I've got the BG exit selected here. And then I right-click, I can add an event directly from the stage. I'm going to add a tap area event, which would be Google Ad, go to page, GWD ad, banner page. So what this is going to do is this is going to collapse the ad as soon as you exit. But that's not all I have to do right now. I need to also pause the video, because right now if I collapse the ad, the video will still play, and that's going to give us that annoying sound and do some other things. So I'll just do the exact same thing here, add event, tap area, video, pause. I select the video, there's only one here, and hit save. Okay, so that should fix that problem. We can test that out by hitting preview again. Now if I hit the background exit, we can hear that it's stopped, so that's the first good thing. And then when we go back to the ad, you can see that it has also collapsed the ad. So great, that's another one off our checklist of things to fix. Next on our list, let's see what I did wrong with the specs page. If I look at my QA report, I can see that the close button doesn't close the ad. Well, that's definitely a problem. This is another easy one to fix. I've got a close button here. I've got my close button. And yet again, this is just adding an event that was missing. Right-click, add event, tap area. And if you're curious, the tap area just allows it to work on both mobile and desktop. So if you're using a mouse, it works for click, but it also works for a touch event on a mobile device. I will go to Google Ad, go to page. And then I want to go to the banner page, which is collapsing the ad, going back to the collapsed state of the ad, and save that. That should fix that issue. Again, you notice how after every one I'm just testing to make sure it works. And now it does work. So that's good news. Next problem is on the 360 page. Here we have the specs button doesn't work, and the close button does not trigger report manual close. Okay, well, yet again, I think you might be sensing a pattern here. These are all just missing events. So let's start with the specs button. If I click on the specs button here, the specs button, and I right-click and say add event. So the specs button wants to go to the specs page. So again, we're going to add a tap area event, Google Ad, go to page, and the specs page is the expanded page 1. Save. The other event that we need to add here is the report manual close. So according to my QA report, the close button's working, and I can see that when I preview, the close button works on the 360 page, but it's not reporting that there's a close. So if I add a tap area and go to Google Ad, there is an event for reporting manual close. So I'm just going to click that. Save. That should fix 360. Now I can't check locally if the manual close is reported, but I can check that in Studio, and it will also be regressed, hopefully, by my QA people who will check and make sure I fixed everything. But let's at least make sure the close button's working properly on all the pages. That looks good. From 360, I can now go to the specs page, so that's working now. And yeah, so that all looks good. At this point, I've fixed everything in the QA report except for one thing, and that's adding the border. Now, adding borders in GWD is really easy. I mean, yeah, you could draw a border or make it part of your background, but the much easier way to do it is to just publish your ad. When you hit the publish button, there's a little checkbox here to add a border, and you can pick your color. I'm just going to go with black. And then when I publish, it automatically uploads it to Studio because I'm logged into my account from GWD, and this will automatically update in Studio so that my QA guy, Roger, can go back in and confirm that all of my changes have been made. Et voila. Back to you, Roger.
Excellent. All right. So I, as a QA person, would roll back into that ad after Amanda submits it to me and verify that all of those changes have actually been made. Basically, it's much more of the exact same thing you just saw, which is me clicking a lot of buttons and checking for counters. Instead of using the last half hour to do that all over again, why don't we change over to the Q&A section portion of the day, and we can answer some of your questions. So, looking at the Dory, hang on, let me pull it up. So, top-rated question so far. Any tricks for QAing HTML5 banners that are handed off by a production house and not uploaded in Studio? Well, if you're going to run these as rich media through DoubleClick, you definitely need to upload it to Studio at some point. The only other way to test for that, do we have a good answer here? You can do functionality testing as far as loading it into each browser, loading it into different mobile platforms, and you can run through exactly what you saw me do with the functionality testing portion. You want to click on every button. You want to make sure everything is firing properly. Now, as far as the tracking, I don't know that you would be able to do that necessarily unless you set up like a JavaScript call to fire some sort of a message that says, "Hey, you've also triggered this," and you set that up in the same function.
You could use the browser dev tools in order to see console logs to make sure that reports are actually that those logs are firing. You know, you have to dig for it a bit, but you will be able to see that traffic. It's just not as simple as using the QA tools within Studio.
Yes. Next question. Can we build a tool like the Flash Click Tag Tester? Yes. So we are currently working with our product team and engineering teams to try to develop a similar tool. So it is a work in progress. We definitely want to give that kind of functionality to you guys. It's a huge time saver, so we definitely see the value. Next question. You're facing what every ad server faced. The platforms don't seem ready at all for flash-free ads. Multiple file dependencies. So I think it's just a component.
Well, no, it's a comment.
Oh, sorry, it's a comment more than a question. Sorry.
So yeah, this is something that we're working on. I mean, it's really kind of an industry problem. It just has to do with the way that HTML5 is packaged differently than Flash. So, you know, to be continued, depending on where the industry goes. Yes. If there was a more specific question in there, you might want to try resubmitting, making that a little more clear. Thank you.
How do we test the backup image? So it used to be really easy when we were using Flash-based creatives, because you would just go in and disable the Flash elements, and you would automatically see the backup image. Right now, the best way to test a backup image is a great question. Sorry.
There is currently no QA way to do this in DoubleClick, but we are working with product and engineering at this time in order to develop a validation tool similar to what we had for Flash. So please check back soon. But right now, when you upload, you can tell whether or not there's a backup because it yells at you if you don't have one.
Right. And then the other way to definitely check it is to grab an old version of Internet Explorer. It did not support HTML5, so if you serve your ad there, you should see the backup. As Amanda said, you want to make sure that Studio is telling you it has a valid backup, but then to trigger it, you're going to need to look in a very old browser that doesn't support it. So Hangouts is very nice, but not so easy for non-native English. Is there any material for those who want to learn step-by-step as I just showed? Yes. So we have actually a really robust help center. And within this help center are certification and learning sections. So we have put together quite a bit of detailed step-by-step tutorials that you can walk through yourself, and you can get certified in our product on a lot of different aspects. There's HTML5, there is Flash, which hopefully you won't ever use again, there's the QA certification, and then there's a lot of other smaller specific featured type certifications like maps and things like that. So yes, if you go to our help center and type in Studio certification, you will see a large number of tutorials that you can walk through step by step. We use DCM to upload HTML5 banners. Is there a way to QA in there? There is currently not a QA method in DCM. We're working with our product and engineering teams to develop our similar validation tools like the Flash Validator. So I think once that is released, it will act as the QA tool of choice for DCM. How do we QA HTML5 banners when we upload them directly to DoubleClick digital marketing? That's actually the exact same answer. We are going to need an in-product version of the Flash Validator tool that will work with HTML5. So how do QA for publisher and industry IAB specs? One thing is QAing to traffic in DCM, but as advertisers, we must ensure our assets abide the publisher and IAB specs. Any tools? So the first thing is most of our best practices that we talked about today align with the majority of publishers' specs. When I was showing you the QA console, you can see for each individual file, you can see how big that file is. The best way to come up with the total file delivery weight is not by adding up those files, but actually to look in Studio. And within Studio, you'll see a compressed file size. That's the size that's actually delivered to publishers. So you can see exactly up front what size you're sending them. So other specs that they might have are, as we mentioned, the border, the amount of time that they allow audio, animation to play or video to play, things like that. For those publishers whose specs do not fall into the LCD lowest common denominator kind of across the board, developers and QA testers are going to need to be aware of them and then specifically test for them. So outside of the Studio console, you can use the Chrome development tools. There is a large number of sort of tracking and real-time information that you can see by using the Chrome developer tools. That's the other way that I would suggest you test for those ads and those specific specs. You can see file by file what's loading. You can see the size that's loading, in the order that it's loading. It's a very powerful tool set. What do I do if my QA team is not doing a good job? The obvious answer would be to get a new QA team, but I would say that perhaps you can show them this video and proper ways to go through QA.
QA certification.
QA certification. I'm assuming that if they have a QA team, they are already certified, but if not, that is a great first step. We also, so one other thing that we have is if you go to our Rich Media Help Center and you type in QA guidelines, there are a bunch of sample scripts that a QA person could use to walk through different types of ads. So the first thing they would use is the LCD. They can walk through those 10 or 12 items to make sure that each of those are checked off. And then there is, from that guidelines page, a specific format type of QA. So for the expandable, you want to make sure that things are expanding properly. You want to make sure that things are closing properly. For floating ads, you want to make sure that they're displaying for a certain amount of time. You want to make sure that the close button removes them from the page. So each individual format will have very specific checks that need to be hit. So if your QA team is not doing a great job, maybe you can have them start following those scripts that we provide. That'll be at least a good first step of getting them headed in the right direction. Let's see, DFP auto Swiffy conversions of Flash ads still seem to only load the HTML5 as a backup. When will DFP allow HTML5 conversions to be used as the main creative?
We'll confirm this. We need to talk with people on our side.
Yes, my understanding was that if you uploaded Flash to DFP, Swiffy would convert basic Flash ads into HTML5 and then serve them. So I want to make sure that this is correct, and we will follow up with you. We captured your name when you asked the question, so we will follow up with you with a specific answer. I don't have a QA button in DCS. How do I get one? This is how you get one. Go to the QA certification exam, study, take a couple practice tests, and pass. And then we will enable that functionality for your account. We also suggest that if you have multiple people on your team, that all of them get QA certified in case someone is out sick one day. That way you're not sharing logins. You can each individually go in and QA and approve ads. Are there examples of specific things DCM HTML5 team has encountered that simply do not work in certain browsers? I think the big one that we've noticed is masking. Let's see, one of our experts has written up a good answer here. You want to avoid using prefix, only features that are experimental or part of beta releases. So make sure you're doing things that are part of the standard release. If you do as a prefixed feature, include each browser prefix so that it's interpreted correctly. And then also leverage caniuse.com to ensure the features you're using are compatible across browsers.
Yeah, it's actually a really great feature if you're doing anything and you're not sure if it's going to be compatible. Just go to caniuse.com, all one word. You've probably used it before. And it'll tell you for every feature in H5 what browsers support it and what don't. Or even if there's partial support, it will explain and break it out for you.
All right, let's see. Next question is, what is the maximum size for the zip file uploaded to DCM? Is it 80K or 100K?
That's a really good question.
That is a good question. I do not know that spec off the top of my head.
We'd have to look it up.
We would need to look it up, yes. So, again, we will follow up with you to give you an answer. I thought it was 100K. But since the IAB specs have been changed so recently, I'm not sure if there was a change on our side as well.
Yeah, the answer should be in the Help Center, but it's possible because of the recent changes that it might not be 100% accurate. So we'll double check on that for you.
Yes. Hello, we're having trouble meeting K-weight restrictions with HTML. Can you review how to add polite load? Well, so this is actually a QA session, so we can't review how to add the coding in right now. I can point you to our Help Center where we have a very good write-up on HTML polite load. Presently, I have access to DoubleClick Studio and have used in testing, yet there's no access point to the QA tab as seen in this presentation. Okay, this is a question that was asked before. To enable that button, you need to pass a QA certification exam. So if you go to the Help Center, type in QA certification, you will get a link out to that testing and the tutorial that will help you pass.
And as a nice follow-up to that, the next question is, we have passed QA certification, but the QA button is still not there.
All right, we have your name, and we'll make sure that we verify your passing, and we'll enable your account today. Sorry about that. Just for everybody's heads up, there is usually a little bit of a lag time between the passing of certification and the enabling on the account. So apologies if it has been too long. Is there another way to tell if the banner has had a polite mechanism applied to it? Oh, and question disappeared. There it is. Although there is a default setting in publishing. So using the enabler page_loaded event will allow you to delay loading content until the publisher page has finished loading. You should be able to test this using the Chrome DevTools. When you load a test page, you should not see your ad load immediately. You should see a delay before all of the contents of your ad load.
So if you want to double check to make sure that the setting that you can do in GWD publishing is actually working, though of course it should be, that's how you do it.
What does it mean when I get a message after uploading the HTML5 in DCM saying that there are dependencies and that the banner is not going to work on some browsers due to some features missing? My first hunch would say that you need to go to caniuse.com to ensure that the features you're using in your ad are available across all of the browsers. And I might have more to say if I could see a screenshot of the specific error that you got, but if it literally is that's what it's saying, it sounds like some of the browsers that this ad's going to be serving in are not going to interpret it correctly. Is there any way to drag multiple creatives into one campaign? Right now, unfortunately, while we can drag and drop files into Studio, we cannot drag and drop and reshuffle campaigns. So the only way to get multiple creatives or a lumping of creatives in the same campaign is to create them in the campaign and then upload them there. Is there a way we can post the answers to the questions we are going through follow-up on in the event page itself rather than just following up with individuals who ask the questions so that we can all review? Yes, absolutely. We will be posting. Yeah, great question. We will be sending all of the information that we've covered today, the deck and answers to the questions, out to people who fill out a survey at the end of the session. It's a very, very short survey, and it will record your email address so that we can send out all of the materials to you. And we will put up a QR code and a very short URL in about 10 minutes so that you guys can start giving us some feedback. Definitely mention how the ad wouldn't load. All right, we translated our Flash ads into HTML5 and DCM. In DCM, they are still showing up as a Flash in page. Is there any way to test that these are actually correctly translated? We translate our Flash ads into it. So I would have to ask a follow-up question to this of, was it like a Swifty conversion when you uploaded them? And that's how they showed up? Because then this could possibly tie back to that other question where they were saying it was the H5 conversion was still being shown as a backup image, or as a backup instead of the main. We are going to probably need to follow up just to verify, validate.
These are questions that are part of DCM. They're a little out of scope for this particular Hangout on Air since we're talking mostly about QA, but we can look into that for sure.
Definitely. When media companies send us specs, they require a 10-file limit when uploading DCM. This includes images, JS, HTML, CSS. Does this mean our media companies are using an older DCM? I've read the limit is 100 files, not 10. Please confirm. I can confirm that 100 files was a recent upgrade. So IAB specs came out, that update was made, and so they might just be working off of outdated information. It is now 100 files. In regard to the Swifty conversion and DFP question, it's my understanding the HTML5 will only serve in environments which will not run Flash, mobile. In all other environments, Flash will still be served as the primary creative.
I believe that's been changed, actually.
Yes.
Very recently.
I believe so also. If it has not for some reason, which I'm pretty confident it has, you can manually change the settings in DCM to serve that as the primary and throw away the Flash. We do not subscribe to Studio. We are uploading our HTML5 tags into DoubleClick Campaign Manager. We'd like to know how to test and QA there. Is there another session? So DoubleClick Campaign Manager does not have a QA environment like Studio does. And so the best way to do testing there is to create a test tag and then traffic it out to some test devices. You can look at it on your laptop, your desktop, your mobile devices, and you're going to run through the very same tests that we're doing here. You want to click on every button. You want to make sure that it's functioning properly. Also want to make sure that when you turn the phone sideways, the orientation changes properly and the layout stays acceptable. We are working with the engineering team, as was mentioned before, to create an automated testing tool that can go through and validate things, but it is still a work in progress. How long does it usually take to get certified? So there are different certifications. There is the base certification, which is the HTML. Once you, I would say that it took me. Disclaimer: I've been writing code for over 20 years, so I knew it pretty well going in. I didn't have to. I had to study the specifics of how it integrates with Studio, but I had a strong base of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. It took me under an hour to pass the certification. The video, there's a video walkthrough of all the elements that are going to be tested for, and I believe that is a video that's under 40 minutes. There's also a deck that you can scroll through and read at your own speed, which contains all the information needed to pass certification. So it really is an individual question. We've run group certifications where people have finished in 15 minutes, and other people are still working after 3 hours. So it really is. I wish I could tell you that there's a definite number of time you should spend and it should take, but it really is personal. We do try to make it as easy as possible. It is an open book test. You have the help center available to you. You can type in elements of the question, and most often it will point you to the answers.
We also have some pretty robust study guides for each specific certification that you can go through that should cover everything that's in the exam.
Next question, is that all the testing you make for all creatives? No, there are additional tests that you need to run based on where your ad will run. If you were designing a mobile ad, I would do all of these exact same tests that I just ran, on a mobile device, just to make sure that things are working there. I've already validated the tracking in Studio, so I don't need to retest for that. I would mostly be focusing on functionality in those other devices. You're also going to want to test on each browser. Is it going to run in Firefox? Is it going to run in IE, Opera, all of these other wonderful browsers? You're going to test them in. You can target away from things in DCM, but if you want as wide a reach as possible, then you're going to want to test in each environment that the ad will be shown. There's also, as I mentioned, the Chrome DevTools. You can do a lot more in-depth testing there of how things are loading, how the sizes are loading, the order in which they're loading, things like that. So at this point in QA, I'm going to make the assumption that the developer has made a good faith effort to build the ad as it was supposed to be built. So I'm not going through a line-by-line code review. This is more of a functionality test. Is the ad going to work in the environment as designed? Is it going to capture the tracking that we're looking for? And is it going to exit out to the right pages without triggering pop-up blockers or other errors?
And I mean, if you've got some sort of special functionality, I mean, if you've got an ad that's got a cool, unique, hand-coded game in it, then you need to make sure that your QA guys know, hey, this is special functionality that goes above and beyond the standard QA testing. You need to test for this to make sure it works. So it's your responsibility to make sure that your QA testers know what they need to look for.
Definitely. Like if you have scoring in that game, you want to make sure that things are tracking right. Yeah, definitely do a lot of testing there. Why my certifications are not connected to my Google account? This is now complicated. So yes, when Studio invitations go out, you have a one-time moment in time to connect it to an email address. And that email address is going to be related to your Studio account for the rest of the life of that Studio account. So please, when you are first signing up for Studio, connect it to a corporate account, not necessarily a personal Gmail account. Wait, did I say that backwards? Connect it to a personal account. Sorry. If you would like your certifications to follow you everywhere, I did it backwards. Apologies. You want to assign it to your personal account. Certifications assigned to your personal account will go on forever. Nobody can delete them from one company or another. Sorry about that. How do you QA an in-app banner? Similar process. You want to make sure you have a live tag, and you want to have a live environment where you're going to test your ad. Create a sandbox, have that test ad out there, go through all the steps that we just walked through. If you're uploading it through Studio, you will be doing the event testing there, and then you will do the functionality testing again in the environment where it's in-app. In the example you showed, the video started with sound. Is that okay? Should the video start without sound, only in auto-expandable banners?
I can answer this.
Amanda, go for it.
So, yeah, when I was correcting that, it said video started, the QA report said the video started with sound and you couldn't mute it. That's obviously a problem. Nobody wants the video to start and not be able to mute it. Now, technically, having the video start with sound was fine in this particular instance because it was a user-initiated action. It wasn't auto-expanded. I had to actually click on the ad in order to expand it. However, it's not a terrible thing to keep it muted originally, or maybe even to not have it auto-play. So the user has to click play once they've expanded it. So it's kind of up to you, but with regards to specs, in this instance, it's okay to have the sound play automatically because it was on a user-initiated action. If it had auto-expanded, then it would not be able to start with the sound initially.
Yes. One other thing to call out there, if you're using a YouTube component and one of your goals for your campaign is to collect page views, autoplay videos do not trigger page views. So yes. In that instance, you would want to, as Amanda said, don't autoplay it. Let the user then click to play. In reporting, how can we figure out if our HTML5 is showing and not the default image? Because if the HTML5 can't play, the default won't be showing up because we have a backup image. When you pull a report, there's a specific column that should tell you how many times your backup served. And it should be right next to the column that shows you how much your HTML5 showed. All right, I've created some ads using GWD and video components, attempted to push them through QA, and creative was rejected. The video won't play in a mobile browser. Any suggestions on how to troubleshoot functionality that is bundled, provided through GWD components? So back in the in the QA preview window, you can create a URL that you can send out to other devices, other people. You should take that URL and plug it into the device you're trying to test on. That will allow you to test there. How do you make sure that the QA team takes into account the specific requirements of a particular publisher when there are no templates available in the template library or GWD? So if you are sending this to our team for testing, when you submit it for QA, there is a comments field. You want just a big entry, a text entry field. You want to very specifically tell them all of the requirements for your testing. And this goes for not just a specific publisher, but if you have specific functionality, like Amanda was saying for the game, that is the place where you want to call out every single thing that needs to be taken into consideration when testing the ad. If you are working with your team member, then you should make sure that somebody has pulled specs, somebody has double-checked the creative against the specs. Usually it is the QA person, so they would need to use the studio interface to look at the size of the ad and then compare that to the spec sheet that was printed out and handed to them. Or emailed to them, because we don't like to waste paper. This is just a suggestion. It would be great to be able to test through various browsers within the preview in Studio in a similar way like the browserstack.com, but inside Studio. So a workaround. I understand what you're saying, and that's an awesome feature request. I'm going to totally suggest that to our engineering team, that we create some sort of a feature for that. In the meantime, while they work on it, you can load your Studio account within those other browsers. So just log into Studio in IE or Opera or Safari or wherever you need to, and that will be testing in that native browser. But great feature request. Thank you for that question. I get a CORS error when trying to preview in DFP creatives that utilize web fonts. Any tips on how to get around that?
This is something we're going to have to look into to get a specific answer to your question, but we will get back to you and send out the answer when we send out all this other stuff.
Yes. Thanks. I'll make render in different devices and browsers, but I don't know if there's additional testing related within the DC console. So the testing that you should do within the DC console is an initial functionality test and then an initial events test. Are all the events firing? Once you have the events firing and you know that that is correct, that's when you can take that, that URL that you generate and stick it into other devices and do the functionality testing there. You don't need to then go and do the tracking testing as well. So hopefully that will help there. And I'm sorry, I don't think I answered the question about the video being rejected for not playing. He asked what to do if the QA comes back saying it won't play in a mobile device. If we're using our video player, that issue would be on your end. Yes, if it is indeed something that is wrong with our video component, please say that in the QA when you submit it, and those guys escalate to us. Our team digs into the code. We would then reach out to you guys to ask for source files to try to figure out what is breaking, whether it is our component that's just not behaving properly, or if it's the way that our code is interacting with your code. So yeah, if it is genuinely a bug, please let us know so that we can fix it. And we will really appreciate you improving our product by submitting bugs. When will the iOS Creative Preview app be released? I know that they are building it, but they have not announced a release date yet. So unfortunately, I don't know, but it is in progress. All right, it seems that we have answered all the questions. I'm going to flip over to the Dory page. I'm sorry, the final page, and hopefully you guys can log in and see. Nope, maybe you're not showing it to you. Hang on one second. All right, I will stop presenting. I will attempt to stop presenting.
We'll get up the final page in just a
minute. We will get that final page up. All right, are we seeing it now? Excellent. So there we go. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to join us and for asking some great questions. I hope that it was helpful. And for any question that we did not get answered, we will be sending a follow-up to everyone who fills out some feedback, and we get your email address. We'll send the presentation doc, all of these steps we took, and thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.